On October the 5th, 1895, the North Road Cycling Club promoted a 50-mile time trial on roads around Shefford, Sandy, Tempsford and Bedford. 22 hardy souls took part, riding for the very first time alone and unpaced on a dreadful day when only 6 of them successfully returned to the timekeeper. The event, the brainchild of Frederick Thomas Bidlake, represented another great leap in the history of cycling, which had evolved from the 18th century wooden hobby horse to the 19th century mostly steel version pictured here, yet still without pedals, and then in the 1880s to the well-known yet short-lived old ordinary or high bicycle, which most people still fondly remember as the penny farthing. But in the 1890s, along came the safety bicycle, a much more stable machine altogether, and with it came a great upsurge in interest in cycling, both for leisure and competition. Machines such as this one, but complete with full chain cases to protect the transmission, were used for racing in those far-off days. But since then, the development of the bicycle, while still based broadly on the basic diamond frame, has been extensive. Here at the headquarters of the Centenary 50, the Samuel Whitbread Upper School and Community College in Shefford, the North Roaders had assembled a bewildering display of machines from down the ages, thanks to the enthusiasts of the Veterans Cycle Club. Another great attraction was their remarkable collection of frame badges. Many were well-known names, some were long gone, but not forgotten. This was, in more ways than one then, a day for taking a trip down memory lane. This was a typical scene at the start of an early North Road event. And here's a well-preserved photo of F.T. Bidlake himself doing what he did for so many years after his own racing career was over, timekeeping. And so we move on 100 years to October the 1st, 1995, and this special centenary event. Amongst the invitees were 11 of the current North Roaders, led away by Dave Sewell, a member of their championship-winning team in the 24-hour of 1988. The course to be used had been cleverly designed to take in as much of the original roads as possible, and the 100-strong field represented a galaxy of talent. Champions past and present were there, including 13 former winners of the title at this distance, 50 miles, 10 former winners of the British Best All-Rounder competition, and 10 former winners of the North Road Memorial 50. There were several others, some no longer racing, who'd just come to witness this historic event. Amongst them, the great long-distance rider and multi-record holder Ron Kitching, whose generous sponsorship of the occasion meant that there was a prize list totaling almost £1,800, with a massive £500 going to the winner. Here's Jim Ewers, the first of the North Roaders, with a sub-2-hour time to his credit. A 2:12:22 was his reward on this occasion, although it's worth pointing out that this course, designed and measured just for this special day, had little of the speed potential of the nearby F1 course based at Baldock and covering almost exclusively the dual carriageway stretches of the A1. Number 7 here's Gordon Dennis, another member of that victorious team of 1988. Gordon's best 50 is a 1:57, but he had to settle for a 2:10.42 on this occasion. The North Roaders had turned out in force for this historic event, not just boasting the first 11 riders on the programme, but also providing the start stewards, the marshals, the headquarters catering corps, and many more. On the line here is Dave Staff, a member of the North Roads racing team, an elite section of the original club. He didn't disappoint them either, because at the finish, his splendid 1:57.7 later took an early lead. There's the last of the North Roaders on his way, Mark Reynolds. But did he realise, I wonder, that the man immediately behind him was a very important person, none other than the chairman of the RTTC, Pete McGrath. Pete, who succeeded Graham Morris as chairman at the beginning of '94, was quite nippy in his prime, but hadn't raced seriously in recent times. Yet he struggled round to finish just inside evens. Behind him, local official Gordon Hart had entered into the spirit of the occasion by turning out on an original Dursley Pedersen from the turn of the century. Incidentally, it was Gordon who designed and measured this special course. Next came another eye-catcher, all-round veteran Joe Summerlin of the Leicestershire Road Club. Now, Joe's choice of machine for the day was a Rover Roadster of approximately 1910 vintage. Behind him, a very modern-looking Ralph Dadswell of the Antelope Racing team on his record-breaking trike. Here's Joe Summerlin now out on the course with authentic alpaca jacket and black tights of the same period as his machine, which even boasted a bell, as regulations demanded, right up to the 1960s. Meanwhile, long-standing local official Gordon Hart was still, at this early stage, very much looking the part on his Dursley Pedersen. He got many admiring looks from the groups of onlookers who turned out in great numbers despite overnight rain, which made early conditions a bit tricky on the many roundabouts to be negotiated. Here's end-to-end record holder Dadswell, who recently added the London York record to his long list of trike achievements. His eventual time here was to be 2:12.37. Behind him, veteran exponent of the fixed wheel, John Tomlinson of Sheffield Phoenix. Yet another who'd chosen an ancient machine for the occasion. John managed very well on what proved ultimately a difficult morning due to a rising westerly wind, and his time of 2:23.45 put him in 73rd place at the end of the day. And just check out the bars, the huge fork clearance, and of course the bell on John's period pedalling machine. Bang up to date now with hard-working Teesside official Les Dawson setting off just 3 minutes ahead of his wife Mary, who was twice winner of the women's BAR in the 50s. The second of the trikes now, National Committee member and former record holder at 3 distances, Don Saunders of CC Breckland. But he was already down on Dadswell in the chase for the £50 fastest trike award. One of only a handful of Barrow boys to beat 2 hours for 50 miles, his ultimate time was a modest 2:16.48. Here's a speedy veteran from the modern era, Ron Hallam of the Beauvale CC, just beyond one of the many roundabouts in the Shefford area. The North Road Marshals, augmented by members of the Edgware Road Club, ensured that no one went off course. Here's trike expert Steve Brown of the East Bradford CC with a 55.42 for a 25 to his credit a few months earlier. He rapidly gained ground on his 3-wheeled rivals and eventually clinched the trike award with a gutsy 2:8.33. It was far too early on a Sunday morning to slake one's thirst at any of the local hostelries en route. That would come later, no doubt. But here's Mary Dawson working up a thirst in a vain attempt to catch hubby Les. This is Len Benton of Team Clean. Now, Len's got a personal best 50 of 1:51.15, done at the age of 56 in winning the 1994 Veterans BAR. Here's another great former champion, Mick Ward of Haverhill Wheelers, 3 times winner of the 50 title in the 1950s. Behind him, Warrington's Ron Spencer, winner of the 12-hour title in 1963 and narrowly runner-up to Peter Hill in the BBAR that same year. Mick Ward obviously enjoyed himself, didn't he? And clearly wasn't bothered, ultimately finishing outside evens. After all, it was the taking part in this historic event that really mattered, wasn't it? Meanwhile, Ron Spencer was on his way to a satisfying 2.8.16 and clearly putting heart and soul into it, just as he did, minus tri-bars of course, back in his heyday. Now here's a fast man from across the Irish Sea, Scott Hamilton of the Banbridge CC. Inside 150 for the first time in 1995, he deserved a ride here, and despite caution on the greasy roundabouts, clocked a great 156.23 to be 11th fastest on the day. He'd already caught this former champion, Dave Whitehouse, who took the 50 title back in 1970. But he, in turn, had also caught one of the oldest men in the field, the great Bob Maitland. Here's another end-to-ender, Dave Keeler, who held that long-distance record in the 50s. Now, 50 miles is a mere bagatelle to Dave, and whilst the speed may have gone, only Joe Summerlin was slower, his enthusiasm to be a part of this special day was plain to see. Now this is Terry Boyle, one of Ron Kitching's Yorkshire Road Club teammates. Terry collected a team medal for his club in the 12-hour of 1960 and was one of the country's fastest 50-milers at the time. 35 years later, he was still able to turn out a 2.8.44 to broaden that famous Ron Kitching smile. Back to Bob Maitland though, twice hill climb champion in the 40s, a North Road 50 winner in 1945 and a seasoned road racing international. Still a prodigious mile-eater, Bob relished the occasion and was keen to put on a good show. Meanwhile, Dave Whitehouse was pulling away from him, as the sun slowly managed to break through and attempted to dry out the roads. Northbound towards Sandy, and Bob Maitland samples the encouragement that all riders receive. Whilst at the same spot, spectators can see that Terry Boyle is rapidly closing the gap on him. Here's the former 12 and 24-hour champion, Ian Butcher, one of no less than 39 riders in the field with a personal 50 time inside 150. Whilst behind him, a rising star from Ireland, Mel Sutcliffe. Primarily a roadman and already in Ireland's Olympic squad for Atlanta in 1996, he'd never ridden a 50 before this, so his eventual 16th place with 1:57.57 against the toughest competition imaginable was a truly terrific performance from the 23-year-old Dubliner. A little further up the road and you arrive at the Bidlake Memorial. This was a favourite spot of his just outside Sandy and a few hundred yards from the Great North Road. It was a day for the non-competitors to pay homage to the man who first hit upon the idea of unpaced time trials. No time for Antelope's Glenn Pickford to stop though. He was really flying. A former Wessex Division champion, he's equally at home in the bunches and against the watch. 2 minutes ahead of him and going almost as well was Corinium's Andy Appleby. A former Junior 10 bronze medalist, he was destined to finish just the wrong side of 2 hours, but in a creditable 26th place. His studies for a degree in sport and exercise sciences were clearly doing him no harm at all. third National Committee member putting his money where his mouth is, so to speak. It's the evergreen Dave Stalker, who was one of the first riders to crack the 150 barrier a quarter of a century before. Dave ended the day easily the fastest of the sport's top officials, with his 2:4:54 claiming 37th place. Ahead of him, and it looks like a road race, but it's not. Former Junior 25 champion Julian Ramsbottom was really doing a ride and sailed past Bob Maitland and Swan Velo's John Stroud. For the record, Stroud, who's no slouch, clocked 2:1:46 at the end, but Ramsbottom looked in a different class altogether as he caught his man for 4 minutes on the Bedford Road. Still only 23 and already with a drawer full of medals on both road and track, he went through the 25-mile mark in 55:24 to take the lead, and he was still on top when he finished, setting the standard with 1:51.9, well clear of Scott Hamilton's 1:56. Here's another 50-mile debutant, Leo's Adam Hardy. 1994's Junior 10 champion came to the event with 9 sub-20-minute 10s to his credit, and he didn't disappoint, taking a splendid 9th place with 1:54.39. Here he negotiates the Bedford turn at speed. Not quite so fast these days, Mary Dawson is having her own private battle, destined to finish outside evens, but happy to be one of the galaxy of champions, past and present, invited to take part. A very brief shot of Duckinfield Steve Butterworth there at the same spot, and behind him Joe Summerlin, still propelling his ancient machine with great aplomb. As timekeepers and marshals compared notes, BBAR contender Henry Idden reached the Bedford turn, but was destined to finish just outside 2 hours. Here's a promising newcomer to the ranks, Keith Murray of the Army Cycling Union. With a long-term ambition to win the BBAR, he made the top 12 in 1995, he went on to clock a highly satisfactory 1:55.41 for an eventual 10th place. Now at this point Murray was almost catching this man, Dave Watts of the Halifax Road Club. Another BBAR contender, Watts had to settle for 17th place with a 1:58. Meanwhile, 65-year-old super vet Jim Bailey, chairman of the CTC, was doing splendidly and rattled out a 2:7.19, which would have given him yet another best on standard had this been a VTTA event. About to catch him at this stage was Mildenhall's Glenn Mason, who looked much faster early on, but he faded a little towards the end to clock a disappointing 2:4.31, some 16 minutes slower than his best done earlier in the season. Here's Glenn Pickford again, this time on the A1, heading for a 1:56.52 and 14th place. By now the temperature had risen and onlookers were really enjoying the occasion. Now, who's this? It can't be the former 25 and 50 champion Derek Cottington? Oh yes it can.
Didn't recognise him.
Behind him, at Sandy again, Bob Maitland still plugging away. I think everyone recognised him. But now a bit of drama. Former 25 champion Martin Pine had hit a greasy patch at Sandy and come off, injuring his left leg and hip. It was a disappointing end to his efforts for the day. But as old-timers reminisce, Gordon Hart continues serenely on his way on his Dursley Pedersen. This part of the country has much to commend it, but there's no time to enjoy the scenery for Adrian Snell of Pool Wheelers as he tackles this difficult course. There must be less strenuous ways of spending a Sunday morning. VC Deal's Malcolm White at his next, another all-rounder, and on his way to a 158. Behind him, a great ride from Rowan Horner of the Fareham Wheelers clinched 7th place despite a minor delay here with a 154.24. This is newly elected chairman of the VTTA, Eddie Green, careful to dodge a puddle and a pothole there, and Octagon Velo's Rick Van Looy does exactly the same thing on his way to a modest 2.7.45. Now, he'd just caught the former North Road 50 winner, Sid Lovett, at this point, but Sid finished like a demon to clock a satisfactory 2.0.55. Former 25 champion Maxine Johnson, meanwhile, was leading the women's section of the event in her first attempt at this distance, and her 2.5.24 clinched the £50 first prize, as you'll see later. Even the redoubtable end-to-end record holder Pauline Strong was no match for her on this occasion. Talking of the end-to-end, here's a man who held that record in the 1970s, Paul Carbott, the former BBAR and 50 champion. Like so many great names from the past, he revelled in the occasion and was still able to record a time of exactly 2.2. Take a good look at Paul. He's a veteran now, of course, but he seems even slimmer than he was in his heyday. Just 3 more of the many who turned out to watch this centenary event on the road from Sandy to Shefford, and soon to hurtle past them, twice winner of the BBAR, Kevin Dawson. The Optimum Performance ace had clocked a personal best 1:41.55 in the previous week's Harrogate Nova event, but it still wasn't quite good enough to win him a 3rd BAR title. But he obviously had good form, and a halfway time of 56.3 resulted in a final time of 1:51.9, and that put him dead level in the lead with Julian Ramsbottom. Even more dramatically, what Dawson and the rest didn't know at this stage was that triple 1995 champion Richard Preble, last man off, had punctured after only a couple of miles and retired. Here's another former BBAR winner, Margaret Allen, who also won the 50 title twice in the 80s. Margaret was clearly not enjoying the tough conditions, but honour was at stake here, and she persisted, although recording a modest 2:24. Staying with the women, here's triple BBAR June Pitchford, who was twice a champion at this distance and 4 times at 100 miles. Her ambitions on the day were also modest, though, and she just beat Margaret Allen by 30 seconds. She's also here on the point of catching the 1962 50 champion Joan Kershaw, who also won the 25 3 years later. The Merseysider chose fixed wheel for the day and suffered a bit, just scraping inside evens by a couple of minutes. Well, Joan put a brave face on it and tried ever so hard to stay in touch with June as they headed back towards Tempsford, but it was the Starbridge woman who edged away in the end. But this woman caught them both. 4 times 100 champion Christine Roberts. Despite pushing her usual huge gear, she was ultimately second only to Maxine Johnson in the women's section with a 2:10. But now to a man right on top of his form, Jeff Platts of the Colville Wheelers. Newly into the veteran category after winning the 100 title in '94, he'd celebrated by getting inside 50 minutes in a recent 25. His halfway time on this demanding course was a remarkable 54.7, well clear of Dawson and Ramsbottom. Still trusting to toe clips and straps on his otherwise ultra-modern machine, Platts was really flying and had already sailed past a surprised fellow veteran Shay Giles. If he kept this up, there'd be few from those still to come capable of beating him, with Preble already out of it. Meanwhile, the June and Joan battle continued.
Fair right. Fair right.
This is Andy Lyons of the Plymouth Corinthians, who'd just been caught by Jeff Platts, his elder brother Ken, on the road back from Sandy. There he is. Lyons, 7-time Southwestern BAR, was on his way to 18th place with a 1:58.10, but this man was on his way to pinching the fastest veteran award off his brother under the one rider, one prize rule, with a splendid 1:56.37 that gave him 13th place overall. Here's an interesting character, Yorkshire Road Club's Mike Brecken. Inside 2 hours, for the first time in his life the week before, at the age of 59, he spent 27 years in Canada. Now a top executive at Rally Cycles, he was a BBAR team champion back in 1958. His time on this occasion, a modest 2:17.58. This is the West Suffolk Wheelers short distance specialist Ben Mickleborough. This rangy 24-year-old holds all his club's records up to 30 miles, but doesn't usually like 50s. Even so, he finished well up the field on this difficult day with a 2:3.10, only 7 minutes outside his best.
Right, normal pace for October.
Multisport's Nick Gardiner, having clinched 3rd place in the BBAR, was in relaxed mood on this day of celebration and chatted his way round to a most untypical 2:8. That's a massive 25 minutes outside his best, but I don't think that he minded too much. Far more serious, though, was evergreen Pete Longbottom, the former 100 champion and 25 competition record holder. Pete went through half distance in 55.17, just over a minute down on Platts, and continued in barnstorming style to clock a terrific 1:50.52, despite this minor delay. Slightly more sedate these days is the 1967 BBAR Mike McNamara, but there were many here at this event who remembered his epic 12-hour victory of 66. His time here was a modest 2:12, but he was another who was only too pleased to be taking part. Another brief shot of Andy Lyons there, followed by Mike Brecken again. Now, hard to recognise if you haven't seen him since his heyday, this is Les West, one of the true greats of the 60s. He was 50 champion 31 years ago and went on to win a silver medal in the Amateur World Road Race. A gifted all-rounder both against the watch and in the bunches, he was yet another who felt compelled to turn out for this event, even if a little short of racing condition. But, you know, class will out, and a 2:2.39 was a worthy effort for someone who hadn't turned a pedal in anger for many years. From one great champion to another, the queen of time trialling, Beryl Burton. Her record of 25 consecutive BARs will surely never be beaten, and her 7 world titles earned her first an MBE and then an OBE. Despite recent illness, her determination to be part of this occasion was rewarded with shouts and cheers at every corner. Beryl's modest time, a 2:28, was unimportant. It wouldn't have been a true celebration of 100 years of time trialling without her. And so to the finish, back at Shefford, where it was by now a pleasantly warm, if breezy, day. That's end-to-end record holder Andy Wilkinson crossing the line, 7 seconds inside 2 hours. And this is Gordon Hart on his Dursley Pedersen confessing that he hasn't been all the way round. He'd had a little bit of tyre trouble. But here's Jeff Platts clocking a superb 1:49.21 to take the lead as news filters through that 9 times BBAR Ian Camish has retired. That was Camelot's Mr. Consistency, Clive Brooks, recording a 1:51.35 for an ultimate 6th place, as veteran George Nolan with a 1:58 just holds off fast-finishing Pete Longbottom, who goes into 2nd place. Veteran Shay Giles, North Road 50 winner in 1990, managed a 1:58 for 19th place, and there was a big cheer for Joe Summerlin as he finally trundled across the line after more than 3 hours of effort on his vintage machine. Behind him, Les West looked relieved to have got round, whilst local man Bob Garrett, fresh from being first British finisher in the Paris-Brest-Paris marathon ride, clocked a 2:14 in front of several of his Bedfordshire clubmates. So, back out on the road, who could beat Platts and Longbottom's superb times for the £500 first prize? Perhaps now only this man, Gethin Butler, fresh from having clinched the BBAR for the 2nd consecutive year. With Camish and Preble both out of it, he was almost certainly Platts' last challenger. With his usual attacking style, this 3rd generation of the famous Butler family clocked a rapid 55.36 at half distance, but even that was only 5th fastest. As the large crowd at the finish awaited his arrival, they cheered home the end-to-end hero of the 50s, Dave Keeler. And so into Shefford stormed Butler now, and he'd certainly done a terrific ride, pulling time back on both Ramsbottom and Brooks. But the clock was ticking remorselessly away, and here, almost taking 11 minutes out of Crew Clarion's Alan Roberts, he crossed the line in 1:50.59, a minute and a half behind Platts and 7 seconds slower than Longbottom. So to one of the last few finishers now, John Blacker, a member of the all-conquering Rockingham CC team of the 60s. And that just about concluded the action out on the roads. Join me now inside the race headquarters for the presentations and the celebration. Well, now to our formal prize presentation, ladies and gentlemen, and my pleasure to introduce, to start the ball rolling, a man who's done some fairly good times in his day. Perhaps today wasn't quite one of them, but he was delighted to be taking part in it as a rider, as well as being here in his official capacity, ladies and gentlemen, as the chairman of the Road Time Trials Council, Pete McGrath.
Thank you, Mike, for that introduction.
Just hold it close.
Hold it close, he says. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I think the weather, Graham was trying to repeat what happened 100 years ago. He didn't quite manage it because he managed to leave the rain out. But other than that, it was pretty bad. I would like to thank everybody for coming and participating in some way today. This is a tremendous milestone in the history of time trialling. 100 years of racing in a format that virtually hasn't changed over all that time. I think there's some tremendous performances today. And looking at some of the old-timers there, they're doing really well. One that caught my eye was my old clubmate, Les West, with the 2-2. I think I'll have to start training again. Well, I would like to say a little thank you to a number of people. This event was really the brainchild of my predecessor as chairman of the council, Graham Morris. And I think we're really indebted to Graham for the concept of today's event, and Graham has played a tremendous part all the way through the organisation. I'd like to also say a word of thanks to all the marshals and helpers today who made sure we couldn't go off course. I'm not sure whether thanks is the word. And I'd also like to thank the North Road Club for putting on this event. The North Road Club, of course, you all know, put on the first event, and it's very appropriate that they should promote this centenary event. And I'd like to thank Graham Thompson in particular for the many hours that he spent organising the event and tracking down the riders from the past. And lastly, a lot of the things associated with this event, the trappings and all the niceties of it, have been made possible by the generous personal sponsorship of Ron Kitching. It's tempting to finish by saying see you next time, but I guess there's not many here who'll be there next time. So I'll finish by saying here's to the next 100 years of time trialing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. Yes, we look forward to seeing you all at the Bicentenary. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, a man who, to many people, is Mr. Cycling. He has been, in his day, a tremendous record holder, and since his retirement from business, has been cycling's benefactor on many occasions. It is to him to whom we owe a sincere debt of thanks for this magnificent prize list. I'll say no more except to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to Mr. Ron Kitching.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, of course, is a bit of a flatterer, so you don't take much notice of what he says. Actually, I thought the sponsor was a Mr. Ronald Kitching. I've been looking for him, and suddenly realised it was only my mother and my wife that ever calls me that. So I'm learning, I'm getting a little bit better. I must apologise, by the way, of my voice isn't very good. You'll notice somebody keeps handing me a can of Coca-Cola to try and grease the vocal cords. You know why? It's the fault really is you people. I spent the whole of yesterday evening and all of this morning shaking hands with old friends and reminiscing with so many of you that have enjoyed this sport of cycling. For me, it's been a life. Well, as most of you know, you start out and have a hobby or a sport or something and you go to work. Well, I had a bonus. My hobby was cycling, and then somehow or other I got into cycle racing, so my sport was cycling, and then I went into business, so I had a great bonus. All my three best things in life were all cycling. But this event in particular appealed to me because it's bringing together so many old-timers, and this has been a nice thing this morning, meeting people who are prepared to come out, not all of them to ride, but to come out and watch and talk and see people, and it's really a bonus. My credit, of course, goes to various people, and in particular the North Road, and they've done a magnificent job of promoting this event. I don't think anybody anywhere could have done a better job, and for me, that makes it all worthwhile. The other thing, of course, is the RTTC, and they're really wonderful. They've kept this sport of time trialing going all these years. They weren't here 100 years ago, well, neither were we. Although I think it's 61 years since I won my first medal in a bike race, and I have the distinction of being the first to set the trend towards what you see today, that is colourful costumes. I was the first rider in time trials to ride in shorts, and I also was the first to ride in ankle socks. So probably if I was riding today, I might have been looking just as colourful as some of you. Well, I'm going to shut up now and let you get on with the prize presentation. And just to say thank you all for turning up today. It's made it worthwhile, I'm sure, for the North Road.
Well, 1948 it was, by the way, when he won his one and only, strangely, one and only RTTC Championship medal. It was a team medal of the 100 mile championships in 1948. He's probably long forgotten. So have I. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, now to the all-important prize presentation. To make the presentations, I'd like you to welcome onto the top of the podium the two gentlemen you've just heard speaking, the chairman of the Road Time Trials Council, Pete McGrath, and our sponsor, Ron Kitching. Well, we'll do them all in reverse order, as we ever do on these occasions. I should point out, by the way, that you should bear in mind that the one rider, one prize rule has been implemented, which means that there are one or two subtle changes compared with the actual fastest finishing order. Okay? So long as that's all clear. We start, ladies and gentlemen, with the rider who has gained the 10th place prize, a prize of £20, with a time of 1:56.23, representing the Banbridge CC in Ireland, Scott Hamilton. In 9th place, winning a prize of £30 with a time of 1:55.41, one of this year's BBAR top 12ers from the Army Cycling Union, Keith Murray. Up into 8th place, ladies and gentlemen, riding his very first 50-mile time trial. Last year's Junior 25 champion from the Leo Road Club with a time of 1:54.39, Adam Hardy. Up to 7th place, another of the youngsters winning a prize of £40 with a time of 1:54.34, representing the North Wirral Velo, Paul Manning. Up to 6th place, a prize of £50 for a time of 1:51.35. That prolific winner from the VC Camelot, Clive Brooks. I think we'll invite the next two riders up together because they have, after all, finished in equal 4th position. Now, here's another little piece of news I can give you hot foot from the RTTC. According to our programmes, 4th place is worth £125 and 5th place is worth £60. Quite a big gap, I think you'll agree. I thought they would just add up the two and divide it by 2, but no, the RTTC, ever generous, have decided to make both prizes £125. So come on up, ladies and gentlemen. These two riders here, both having clocked 1:51.9. Kevin Dawson of the Optimum Performance and Julian Ramsbottom of the North Wirral Velo. Let's beg the question, what would the RTTC have done if it had an equal first? However, for the moment, let's thank Pete and Ron for that section of the prize list, but we're now going to move on to the section where we congratulate the North Roaders in more ways than one. This is their event, and of course they run it each and every year as they have done for so long. And what a great turnout of North Roaders there were actually out on the road today. Racing, marshalling, helping, what a tremendous credit they have done to their club today. To present their prizes, to the first 4 anyway, I'd like you to now welcome the man who's really been the backbone of the organisational team, the club's president since 1986, Graham Thompson. the North Roaders, ladies and gentlemen, receiving a gold medal for his time of 1:57.7, Dave Stack. Save the day, Dave. Save the day.
Solid goal.
Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to the main prize list. If you'll forgive me putting it that way, North Roaders, well done for all your efforts. And first of all, to the category awards, we begin with the veteran. Now, once again, this is where a bit of the one rider, one prize rule comes into operation. But from one plat to another, that can't be so bad, can it? The £50 prize for fastest veteran with a time of 1:56.37. It's the Colville Wheelers, Ken Platts. Incidentally, Ken's is the first of a number of sashes which are being presented to winners, and our thanks go to BK, Ken and Brenda Robbins, who have supported time trialling in the RTTC so well in the past and again here today. BK, our thanks. We now come on to the best tricyclist, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll forgive me if I indulge myself just one moment. It's really so that the light doesn't shine too much on the top of my head, but it's also to announce that the winner of the fastest tricyclist prize of £50 comes from a club known as the East Bradford Cycling Club. He did a time of 2:8.33, Steve Brown. Now we come on to the fastest under-23 rider, and again this one rider one prize rule has been brought into operation here. The £50 prize in this section therefore goes to a time of 1:54.24 done by the Fairham wheeler Rowan Horner. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the turn of the ladies, and wasn't it great to see such a good turnout of the Ferris sex here today? To present these prizes, someone different who is known to all the North Roaders, of course.
He's a gentleman who joined the club in 1942. He is now 94 years of age, and he specifically asked his club if he could have the honour of presenting the prizes to the ladies. So, ladies and gentlemen, Fred Bishop. So, in third place, I'm sure Fred will be delighted to welcome her up here. I saw her do a splendid ride in Yorkshire just a few short months ago to win the 100-pound championship. Today she's done a splendid time of 2:12.52 to pick up a prize of £50 from the Colville Wheelers, Liz Mill.
Not leaf here, is it?
In second place in the ladies section, yet another former champion, winning a prize of £75 with a time of 2:10.32. A member of the Crew Clarion Wheelers, Christine Roberts.
Well done, Christine.
And the winning lady today, ladies and gentlemen, who won the Championship 25 last year. Today she takes first prize in this 50, a prize of £100 with a time of 2:05.24. A member of the Arnold Velo, Maxine Johnson.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there you are. So Maxine will go down in history as the winner of the women's Centenary 50-mile marathon. Well done, Maxine. And well done to Fred, who was born just 6 years after it all began, 94 years ago. What about that? Well done, Fred. And maybe we'll be here to see you all celebrate your centenary. Okay, well now, ladies and gentlemen, to the big three, the 3-2-1 on this historic occasion. In third place, having just clinched the British Best All-Rounder title for the second year in succession, doing a splendid time today of 1:50.59 and taking home a prize of £225, back with his original club, the Norwood Paragon, this year, Gethin Butler. the runner-up, ladies and gentlemen, only fourth at the halfway mark if you look at the 25-mile times, but once again proving that a good old one can always come back good at the end. He finished with a time of 1:50.52. He wins the second prize today of £350. Ladies and gentlemen, North Wirral Velo's Pete Longbottom. Well, finally, ladies and gentlemen, Pete McGrath and Ron Kitchen are joined by Graham Thompson to present the final award of the day. The spoils for having won this historic centenary time trial. A time which, well, I suppose if you get all this competition together, even on a hard course on a hard day, these guys will pull out the times. And I think you'll agree that this winning time of 1:49.21 speaks volumes for the strength of the rider who did it. He wins this historic event. He takes home the first prize of £500, and of course he becomes the latest winner of the North Road CC Memorial Trophy. A bouquet, a sash, and our congratulations go to Colville Wheeler's very own Jeff Platts. Now, whilst we've got Jeff up there, ladies and gentlemen, for the purposes of history, if we could perhaps have the second and third, Pete Longbottom and Gethin Butler back up, together with the winning lady, Maxine Johnson. Maxine, I know you're not too far away. If you come back there, she's down there, and join the first three men. Ladies and gentlemen, the top placed riders in this historic centenary centenary gifting run by the North Roads on behalf of the Road Time Trials Council.
Stop that, Gethin.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner and last year's 100-mile champion, I remember, would like to say a few words on behalf of all the riders who've taken part today. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Platts.
Just one word to be said about the whole event, and that's absolutely brilliant. Well, that's two words, but which counting. The number of people gathered here, the number of people out on the course today, has far exceeded any national championship that I have ever ridden, and it's just been a fantastic event throughout. I'd like to thank Road Thompson for putting in a load of hard work, for Ron, for the RTTC, for everyone who's contributed in any way towards the event. I'd also like everyone to give a big clap, a big round of applause to all the guys who've actually ridden around on the old ordinary bikes. I mean, they must have been out there for ages and it must have been really hard work, so they deserve a round of applause as well. Finally, for me, I'm very, very pleased to win it. It's been an absolute wonderful year for me. winning. I can't tell you why. It's just one of those things. Thanks very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's just one more little speech to come, and it comes from the man who, as I said earlier, has led this magnificent North Road CC team in putting on this historic event. The president of the club and the event organiser, ladies and gentlemen, Graham Thompson.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I must thank Ron Kitchen for providing the finance for this event. Without it, it couldn't have been run on such a grand scale. Thank you, Ron. I am the manager of the team of marshals, timekeepers, the refreshment ladies, and everybody else who has helped. On the day, I've sat back, and all I've done has banged in a few no parking signs, which is perhaps rather negative, but I'd like to emphasise the positive side. I think everybody here today, and I can tell by looking at your faces, that you have all enjoyed yourself. A wonderful day for the sport of cycling. Thank you very much. The only thing that has gone amiss is that I didn't obey the instructions of the National Committee, and I thought I was to order the bouquets. So we have 2 bouquets left over. The first goes to a remarkable lady who wrote an autobiography some years ago, which I've been reading. The one and only Cheryl Byrne. Sorry. Found the secret of eternal life, I don't suppose I shall be here in 100 years' time. But if I am, I'll put myself as forward as the organiser. Thank you very much for attending. Look at the display of veteran bicycles and all the other items around the hall. Speak to your friends. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
And with that, Graham Thompson and the North Road Cycling Club brought the first 100 years of time trialling to an end exactly where it had all begun in 1895. As RTTC chairman Pete McGrath said, here's to the next 100 years.